like we can become like gods and we can do like this and like that, right? And what's interesting is like we kind of say the same thing in Catholicism, like there's a God inside of you, like you can be like God, but the God we're talking about is like Christ crucified, right? And like we're aiming to be like Christ, and
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Catholic Founders Podcast. I'm Silas Mähner, your host. Now, as you could probably tell from my background, if you're watching the video, I'm still in this interim phase. I'm currently recording from a temporary spot while we get fully moved in and settle into Nashville. So please bear with me as you see this kind of like grandma's place look in the background. It won't be there much longer. But today's conversation is one I've been looking forward to sharing for a long time. We are talking with Federico Chavez, or Fed, as everybody calls him, one of the co-founders of Tex. And we'll get into a little bit what Tex is doing, so I won't share that. But Fed and I first met when I first visited SF back in July, actually, of 2025. And he must have liked me enough because he ended up letting me stay on his couch last time I was in SF for that half-day Ascent event that they hosted there. And he is one of the most ambitious and sharpest Catholic founders that I've met in the venture scale space. We dive into some really fascinating different territory today, specifically the San Francisco Renaissance. There's kind of a massive revival happening there in the Bay Area right now with record-breaking conversions and a growing cohort of serious high-caliber startups led by devout Catholics. We discuss, a couple of things, the unique leverage of building in Silicon Valley and why bubbles can actually be a good thing for the Catholic innovation. We talk about the concept of magnificence and how Catholics should reclaim the intellectual ownership of greatness and ambition. Then we talk about this kind of, I guess you'd say, to the death athlete kind of mindset, training every day to leave everything on the court for the glory of God. Then we wrap up with the future of the Catholic VC ecosystem and why the world needs more Catholics running the companies that define our future. So whether you're a bootstrapped entrepreneur or aspiring tech mogul, Fed's perspective on the duty of the Catholic builder is incredibly challenging and inspiring. Before we get into it, I do want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Paraclete VA. If you are looking for offshore talent that shares your Catholic values, reach out to Paraclete VA today. You can email us at admin@catholicfounders.com with a little bit about what you're looking for. And if you are building and looking for your tribe, consider joining the Catholic Founders Guild by upgrading to a paid subscription. On our Substack, Fed is actually a member. He's been a great addition to have on board alongside many other very ambitious Catholic venture scale entrepreneurs and mom and pop shop type of Main Street businesses. All right, without any further delay, please enjoy this episode with Fed. Welcome to the pod, Fed. How are you doing today?
doing good.
Awesome, man. I'm super hyped to have you on. This is a while coming. I think this is going to be a good one. People have to bear with me though while I'm not in my podcasting studio. I'm in interim while I'm moving to Nashville. So I'm working out of various places. You can see my fake library behind me in the meantime. Awesome, man. Well, I want to start off with this. You and I were both together at a half-day summit in San Francisco that was kind of put on by Cent and a few others to talk about just the Catholic founder and VC ecosystem broadly. Some really, really cool people there, actually. Many past guests on the podcast as well. And for those unfamiliar with what's going on in the Catholic startup scene, I think a lot of those people listening, could you just give us your perspective from that event, but also just broadly speaking, what you're seeing being somebody who's based in San Francisco?
I think the biggest thing, I think the Catholic startup scene has generally always had this interesting problem of geography, where a lot of the most Catholic places, well, you have people that want to start startups everywhere, but where you see a big difference in the kinds of startups, qualities of startups, qualities of funding, kinds of funding, usually has to do with geography more than anything. And what's been happening is that in San Francisco, specifically, really is San Francisco, the Catholic scene there is booming. Like one of the churches there, St. Dominic's, broke a 100-year-old record for baptisms. And 100 years ago, that was mostly due to babies. And this time there's a lot of conversions, started to see the traditional parish there is just excellent. Just more and more people come. And you have a lot of great startup founders becoming Catholic, a lot of great Catholics starting good startups. And then because you're in San Francisco and you're able to be in the place where the best companies, live, thrive, get funded for one reason or another, you finally have a set of companies that are venture scale, venture grade, sort of cream of the crop companies led by really, really good Catholic founders. Not that there haven't been companies like that in the past, but it's generally been pretty sparse. And our big winners, now there hasn't been a big winner out of our cohort, right? You're talking about people that you've had on the pod. But in the past, generally, you kind of have to like rely on there's Hallow, and then there's like this, and then there's that, and like this Catholic investor invested in this, and it's like no. But now it's like, okay, like these are seriously Catholic people starting companies. Some of them are more Catholic companies than others, obviously. But now it's like, okay, like serious startups, serious people. We're not like sugarcoating anything. It's like it's game time.
Mhm. I think that just to see that people are building startups and they are truly Catholic people building them, I think it's a little bit of a different thing, because we usually think when people would say like the Catholic startup scene, I've had some people be confused and think that they couldn't join part of the membership of the group that we have because they weren't building an externally Catholic business. I'm like, no, that's not the point. Actually, the point is we want more people building businesses who are Catholic, not
Hmm.
building Catholic
Hmm.
businesses per se, right?
Hmm.
Catholic in the sense that
Hmm.
the way they're run, but this problem of the quality thing is really interesting to me. Do you have any perspectives on whether or not this can be scaled unless you unless you're in San Francisco? Because I'll put it this way, like I visited San Francisco for the first time this past summer. Obviously, you showed me around. I got to meet a bunch.
First time,
That's my first time. Yeah, yeah. So I had
dude.
wanted to go to the Bay Area for a long time because I'm obviously
Yeah.
big on tech. But the point is, like, until I got there, you didn't like. It's really hard to understand the caliber of company building and founders there until you're there and you see it, because you see founders all over the place. But even in a place like New York, like the tech scene is just not the same level of intensity. So, do you think that this intensity comes from being close to each other, or is it just about spending time with each other? I'm asking because I'm wondering if it can be scaled across the country with time spent together, even if it's virtually, versus does it have to be in person?
That's a great question. I'd say it's not just like the Catholics that are there, right? A lot of what makes good companies and makes us do these big things are just is being in San Francisco, where you have a lot of people doing all sorts of stuff. Like, New York might be like not a close second, but a second, right? Like, and New York has like its batch of companies that are doing really, really well. The founders are always talking about like, well, in New York, you can do this, you can do that, right? People like hustle and they grind in New York, right? But, a lot of the companies over there kind of like more fintech, they're kind of servicing the local industries that are really powerful and whatnot. Whereas like in San Francisco, at a given, social event, you can meet people trying to do satellites, you can meet people trying to make, new sort of like depraved gambling apps. You can like meet people like trying to actually do thes like now it's like good quests and like so on and so forth. And so when you're like in the cut with all these people and being Catholic and having your Catholic friends at the same events makes you really differentiated. People like do come up to you with questions. You'll hop on calls. Investors will like ask you questions about Catholicism and like all that stuff. That is really like the magic of it. And so it can't be replicated. It just can't. Like, you have to be in this sort of like little bubble, and like that's obviously like a place that a lot of critics like talk about. Like, oh well, it's like a bubble, but like it is. And bubbles are in fact good. It is good to have a place where everyone's like sort of bought in to everything, and it's like, yeah, like we have to do this, we have to do that. Places where like impossibilities can sort of like get there's always someone that's going to ask you like more questions, like so on and so forth. And like being Catholic in that space and making that space Catholic is something that's very unique. And like you can't replicate the leverage as well, I think. So like, I mean, I have to like look it up, but I think like 5 of the 7 most valuable companies on the planet are started or are currently run in San Francisco. And so you can't replicate this point of leverage.
Yeah. How important do you think it has been for you on I guess you say more the personal faith side, having an actual like surrounding of other Catholic founders there too? Because you guys have a really strong community at Star of the Sea. Like, what has that been like? Has that always existed since you've come there? And have you noticed like how it like, keeps you grounded? I'm curious, like personally.
I think when I showed up to SF, I was pretty like, yeah, I just like didn't know what to make of it. Like, I'm from Texas. All my team was from Texas. We were like, oh, we're just gonna like, finish up YC and like get out of here and go back to Austin. But you sort of just got like over the like a couple of months. One, like I sort of like really liked the city, and I fell in love with the city. I was like, okay, like it was rough around the edges, and this was like before, like, as the AI boom was starting to kind of really take off. But just like the natural beauty of it and everything like that. Star was just maybe a couple of us going, but now like I can't imagine my life or really my 20s being like in a different place with like different sets of people. Like obviously that being said, life is life. It takes you where like the Lord wants you to go. But like when it comes to the unique problems that like founders face, like day in, day out, but also like the big midterm, the big long-term problems, which are the ones that are like kind of a lot more like painful and like anguishing, having, like your brothers to be able to like kind of talk about these things at length and know that some of them are experiencing this like to varying degrees at different times. And everyone's kind of like trying to share resources and information and all that stuff. It's huge. Like, I mean, this is massive. I mean, I know like a lot of founders talk about like founders hunt in packs. We tend to kind of cluster, and what's good about being like Catholic, and being a founder and being like just like a really critical like person generally is I think it centers you around something that's good. So like you had like the EA thing that happened like in Berkeley and like that was a really successful movement, right? I mean, that was a religion in of itself. You had like really, really valuable companies come off that. And like that money has sort of just like been traded all over the ecosystem. And like some of these guys like run the world now. But like, is it centered around something good is like an actual like pressing and debatable question. Whereas like us, like centered around the good, which like centered around the cross and like being fixated towards that and keeping each other sort of in check and accountable and like fixing ourselves to that. This is like actually like interesting and like unique. And so like the promise of like this cohort being successful will be to be good for everybody, not just in the short term, in the midterm, but then like also like ideally like in the long term.
I'd like to come back to the idea. This is not something I had planned to talk about, but I'd be curious to ask you about your perspective on the EA movement and from a Catholic lens, but we'll come back to that in a second. For people who aren't familiar with you, because we haven't introduced you yet, let's back up a little bit. For anybody who is not familiar, can you just give us a little bit of an intro of who you are and what you're building now as well, so we understand kind of what you're working on?
Totally. Yeah. I'm Fed, one of the founders here at Tex. Tex, what we do is we're really good at understanding ownership and how different kinds of industrial assets, so think excavators, mining equipment, generators, things like that, how it all kind of trades and who's buying it and who's selling it. And we monetize this like research and this understanding by selling sort of platform SaaS to our customers. So we're able to put in front of them specific assets and owners, opportunities that they might want to buy, or like on the other hand, parties that might be interested in like selling assets that they're trying to acquire. That's what we do.
Got it. So let's say I own a big dump truck or something and I want to sell it, but no, there's no platform, like there's no car bids or whatever that website is called where I can just like put it out there and somebody else can go get it. It's not an opportunity that's like clear, and you give the buyer knowledge about what I've got and they can go and find and make a bid and get a better price for it. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, totally. I mean, there's auction marketplaces. You could put it on Facebook Marketplace if you want, but the
Imagine.
majority, and what I mean, like the majority, oh yeah, like, I'm sure they're on there.
Imagine
Like
like a
the majority,
multi-million dollar piece of equipment being sold on Facebook Marketplace.
yeah, I don't know if oh yeah, I don't know about multi-million, but like you could definitely find like skids and stuff
Yeah.
like that on Marketplace. But like the majority of the transaction volume in our industry happens in this off-market way where
Mm,
people are like calling each other and, trying to like, wheel and deal and stuff like that. And a lot of it has to do with the way that people like to transact, right? Like it's not like you're just buying a car, right? Like you're purchasing assets that are critical to your business. And so people want to do due diligence on them. They kind of want to understand their counterparty. So there's going to be like 90% of this equipment ends up getting like financed anyways as well. So there's kind of like more subsidies transactions that like, couldn't necessarily just like live in like just sort of like marketplace. So what we do is we provide like the intelligence and the rails to make all of those um, transactions happen
yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
faster.
No, I wanted to make sure we covered that so people get an idea that you're basically working on kind of enabling or helping enable the reindustrialization of America, right? As we're going to continue to hopefully
Yeah.
build more things, right?
Yeah.
And we might talk about that a little bit, but I just want to make sure people were aware of what you're building, and especially if there's any cracked engineers here, go reach out to Fed.
So true.
He's
Yeah.
gonna be
Yeah.
hiring, so I definitely keep an eye out for that. But let's okay, so that's helpful for background context. If people are interested in learning about why you're building that, I would encourage them to reach out to you directly. Are you looking to hire people who actually care about your mission? You should get in touch with Verso Jobs. Verso Jobs is a platform that uses a gamified application process to find candidates who actually have the right skills and mission alignment with your team. Joe and the team at Verso Jobs first understand your needs, then they go out and they headhunt the best candidates and present you with highly aligned profiles in very short order, oftentimes turning around profiles within a few days or a week. They also won't break the bank. So whether you're hiring for your startup, school, parish, or nonprofit, Verso makes it easy to find mission-aligned talent ready to build the kingdom. Visit versojobs.com to get started. That's Verso, V-E-R-S-O jobs.com. To the heights. So I'm going to go back to this discussion around kind of the Catholic VC ecosystem. If we're going to build these Catholic companies, right, these on the venture scaled side of things that you're talking about, that you guys and the whole cohort are working on, we kind of need an ecosystem of Catholic VCs. I'm just kind of curious, like from your perspective as a founder, what are you seeing in this space? Like what is developed and what has to be developed still from the VC perspective of Catholics investing in this space?
I think the founder class is like one thing, right? And so when you come to SF, right, like not only do the founders like change in composition, but like the venture market, like the capital markets also meet those changes. And I think it's not that I avoid Catholic VCs, not at all. Like over half my cap table is like very outwardly like Christian in some way or another. We obviously like we're a portfolio company of Alter Ventures. But I think like the biggest thing that surprises people, since a lot of these Catholic VCs like haven't spent time in San Francisco or haven't spent time doing early stage investments, is like, like obviously like we're all like part of the same team here, but like you can't be asking, like you can't be dragging out like a DD process, like 3 to 5 meetings and like hours and like asking for things about like CAC or something like that. If you're investing in an early stage company, I mean, this is like a general rule of thumb for like all venture investors. And like, obviously, like, I mean, every founder like will do this to like varying degrees. Me, like if you're on the team, like, hey, you're on the team, like I want to play with you, but other people, like it's maybe like not as important. But like definitely I'd say like for VCs, Catholic VCs, a very nascent space and a space that will probably grow a lot slower. And like I say, due to the nature of capital, right? Like if you only need like one Catholic fund, really, one early stage like $20 million Catholic fund to really like define the space and like get some like good wins out there, and like we need to get them some DPI so they're gonna go do like fund two and like so on and so forth. But yeah, I would say like maybe like I would say I don't ask stupid questions. That's a bit brash. Just like yeah.
Well, just
That's what I would say.
understanding the landscape, right? So that'd be a core point. Is like for anybody who is in that space and wants to do this, like understand the culture. If you want to invest in the best companies, you're gonna have to go at the pace that they're used to, right? Because like I saw it working, like not I shouldn't say working, but like seeing how you were going through your fundraise process and how others like just like seeing the process there. It is very different than when you see it up close and personal. So that'd be one thing. Do you believe that there necessarily needs to be, you said that you only think there really needs to be one Catholic VC, let's say like 20 million or something. Do you think that there is a perfect world where, if you could snap your fingers, there'd be X number of these VCs that were doing this, or is it not really necessary for the good founders? Like, do you just need to be building something good, and whether or not they're Catholic or not doesn't really matter other than the alignment perspective?
Yeah, I think like just kind of like clarify that. I think there only needs to be like one early stage like Catholic only fund. And then obviously like, reserving like funds for follow on, things like that. It is good to have a bunch of Catholic partners everywhere, right? So that way, like they could sort of like clarify things or ensure that there's like alignment, especially like as your business grows and you take on like later stage capital, which it involves like a lot more involvement from, your capital partners. So it's good to have like a robust and healthy ecosystem, like up and down the not just like the capital stack, but like different, like up and down the capital stack, and like as your company matures and grows.
Yeah. I was always curious about this, and I think you weren't able to attend, but we had this dinner in San Francisco with Aditya and some of the others a while back, and I at the time was much more skeptical of, if I was a Catholic, like what would I build a VC-backed company ever? Because I was like, well, I think it kind of seems like out of alignment with the faith. But I've become convinced, in large part due to Aditya's arguments, that there are some companies that are only VC scalable, and like they can only be built with VC scale. So we'd rather have Catholics building those companies to do them in a way that's morally in alignment with our faith, right? So from your perspective, do you see that we like because of the scale of the challenges that the world is facing and the way we need to bring the world back to God, that we should actually have a lot more VC scalable type of Catholic startups, specifically that are like, in moral categories, like where there's a lot of morality involved. Do we need more of that in general from your perspective? Or do you think that a lot of the businesses can be built, bootstrapped or traditionally?
What would be like a moral business?
I think things Zach Slayback talks about this a lot within the biotech space, for example, right? That's one. I think that there could be things within AI, broadly speaking, like we just had Matthew Harvey Sanders on recently talking about the AI problems and making sure it's built in the right way and not there to maximize user minutes, for example, right? Same thing with, like, you could argue social media, right? If it was run by Catholics, it'd be a lot different. Those are some of the areas where I think that there's moral, like relatively substantial moral implications of doing it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like if you had Catholics building gambling apps, you just like wouldn't have gambling apps. I'm very concerned by this. Like I know like our brother Daniel got some flack for sort of bullying, Mark Andreessen into deleting his mockery of the Pope, which was very, I mean, you could any I'm sure that email from the PR person must have been kind of interesting. And the sort of like argument that was eventually thrown on him was that like, hey, like Andreessen is not they're not like shoveling tons of cash into only gambling, to hyper gambling. I saw like it's now like some of the food delivery apps have like reels. So like you can like swipe and you'd be like, oh yeah, that pizza looks really good. And then like, or it's like at the level of like slop
Mm-hmm.
and like hacking and the loops and the like. I mean, like Uber hires like teams of like some of the brightest economists in the world. And the minute that Uber displays you on the screen is like actually longer than a minute. And it's like perfectly timed to keep you waiting for your Uber out there in the cold. And then like there's so many hacks of user behavior. I mean, Meta's entire business model is to hijack your body physically, spiritually, so that they can sell you. Like I have back pain and I'm like so close to spending $400 on that Nord stick. Like it looks like the best one. Like I could work out everything. And so like if there were more Catholics in these businesses, a lot of them just like wouldn't exist. Or like like the Reels algorithm wouldn't be that good. And maybe like things wouldn't be as liquid and
Yeah.
available. And this is always like the flack that Catholics get in tech is that we're anti-progress, right? Or we're anti-acceleration and like all this stuff. And that's kind of the arguments that we always make. I've been making since like really the beginning of, our history is like, okay, like it's not progress for progress sakes. For progress sake, it's like, what are we actually doing here? Is this progress actually good? But I mean, we live, especially VCs, like who, they're not going to wait 10 years to get returns to raise fund two and fund three, right? Like being able to like win big and like, king make and shovel money into a company, it is kind of like a feature and actually kind of like demanded, and very like natural to the way that their types of capital work, right? And so they're just kind of more Catholic
Yeah.
building these like small businesses. I just think a lot of them like wouldn't exist. And I really don't think we need a Catholic social media.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried the Catholic dating apps. I think they're all like pretty bad. Like I like Hallow is a great app. I think Hallow is like the perfect line between like an app that works really well and an app that like very quietly but like reasonably implements, some like behavioral like tactics and like reward mechanisms, but they're not irresponsible with it, right? But it's like, then you go to Instagram and it's just like, whoa, you're just getting
Yeah.
just your or Twitter, like you're dope, you're just getting destroyed basically. So yeah, I mean, just a lot of it wouldn't
Yeah, it's
exist.
very interesting. I mean, because what you're proposing is that even if Catholics were building in these spaces, some of those spaces wouldn't exist, but they probably would exist because somebody else would build them because they have more no moral reprehension to doing so. So in a lot of
Yes.
ways, it's up to us to set the example of how to live a good life and how to build things that are in alignment. Because my perspective would be that there's obviously going to be a lot of this misuse and misbuilding and hijacking of the human brain, etc. Eventually, people get burned out about it, right? That's what we're seeing right now. Is there's so many
Yeah.
people who are
Yeah.
burned out from just the crap that has been shoveled onto them that they're realizing something is missing. They recognize the void, and that's why they're coming back to the faith in droves because they're just hungry for substance, and they recognize that this constant, this dopamine, a rush is not that, right? So in one way, I basically, I think we've covered that point well enough that there's a need for us to build more of these things to be venture scalable. But again, we're not going to build certain things. We're not going to build gambling apps. So at least I hope not. I think pretty much everybody's getting really, really upset about this, especially people who are actually fans of sports. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes. But I appreciate that. So that's well covered. I'm very curious to get a little bit more of the inside thoughts for you. And you can maybe, I don't know if you want to speak for some of the others, but what struck me a lot is when I visited you guys the first time and I was hearing like the way that you guys are, hey, our goal is we want to make San Francisco Catholic again because it was a Catholic city and we're going to make it like that again. We're going to stay here. We're going to raise our families here. Like that's what I heard from you guys. And I'm just curious to get a little bit more inside your head about that. Talk to me about that goal in general and making that happen and how you see that playing out right now.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, I'm a newcomer to San Francisco and to California. I am like a big kind of fan of history and of different things. And San Francisco's always been like this imperial city that we have here in the United States. I mean, for the majority of its history, it's been a bigger and more important city than Los Angeles, and it's meant a lot to a lot of different kinds of people. But it is called, San Francisco, and there's like a mission, and the mission district isn't just called the mission for no reason. Like there's the missions that are there, and there's a tenderness and a charism of the city, which is like it is very accepting. I mean, like just like look it up. Like we're able to sort of exist and thrive there when a lot of people who've never think that it's crazy that we live there and it's crazy that this sort of big revival is happening there, but yet it is, right? And so like when we sort of say like, yeah, we're doing this, we're doing that, it's not that we necessarily see these like, evil forces that are like oppressing on us, but rather than like the big problem here is like apathy, and like just non-participation, right? So San Francisco is one of the few, it's the largest, most major city in our country that has more students going to private school than public school. And so to that end, like Archbishop Corleone, who's an excellent bishop, is doing a lot of work to ensure that those schools are not just Catholic schools in name only, that they're actually like doing a good job of catechizing the youth, but that they're also incredibly academically rigorous, which is also like a charism of the city of San Francisco. It's just like how insanely intelligent everybody is. And so like the key there is you see these like big revivals there and they're happening in our churches, but then also like in the Protestant churches where you're getting a lot of youth there and like so on and so forth. Like I even had a friend recently visit me from Austin who's like, I'm seeing more mothers walking around here with like babies than I do in Austin. That's like, it's all like sort of happening. Some of it is like a social dynamic and all that, but a lot of it's just like, it's available. Like one thing about social media is that it's like a great point of distribution and a great way to meme people into becoming Catholic. Like aesthetics are extremely powerful, right? Like, people get kind of one-shotted by like a really good Catholic reel, and that's like really good that happens and gets them going to church and stuff. And so like when we say like we want to make San Francisco Catholic again, it should be this thing that people think of like the San Francisco, yeah, like the Catholics there have really taken things up a notch, and because it's like a city where Catholics can live and thrive, and it's like a new form of Catholic living in an urban environment, and a new way to cope with like the horrors of modern life in a Catholic way that isn't like move to Steubenville or like get a farm or something like that.
Mhm. Quick interruption. If you're a Catholic business owner feeling bogged down by the administrative busy work that prevents you from moving your business forward, I have a solution for you. My EA and I started Paraclete VA to bridge a specific gap, connecting Catholic entrepreneurs with high-quality Catholic virtual assistants around the world. Several members of our Catholic Founders Guild have already used this service, and by offloading that administrative and marketing tasks, they've been able to do the work that moves their businesses forward without any of the important admin tasks getting dropped. From finance to customer success to marketing to content creation to general admin, we can find you what you're looking for. The cost is simple. $500 when you hire and $500 if you're still happy 30 days later. If you're ready to stop doing repeatable tasks so you can focus on the things that actually move your business forward, email us at admin@catholicfounders.com. Tell us what you need. We'll make a handful of introductions, you interview, and you hire. Most of the time, it takes about 1 to 2 weeks to make a hire. It's that easy. So, what are you waiting for? All right, back to the show. I mean, this is interesting. So I'll bring this back into the conversation then. This EA movement, or the effective altruism, for anybody who's unfamiliar. If you want to make San Francisco Catholic again, how do you view about doing that? Is it mainly through, hey, me and the boys, we're going to go build big companies, we're going to sell them, we're going to make lots of money, and then we're going to, build churches, like we're going to use that money? Or are there other ways that are like the primary method of executing that goal?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, it's good to create and like aggregate like wealth and like capital and all these things. It's dry powder. It's the lifeblood of any structure, any organization. Yeah, obviously, like was it really successful at creating a lot of that and really good at deploying it generally. But then obviously, like you have things like you're trying to do with like a podcast, right? And get like talk to those like really specific people that could be next, right? And like that could be like excellent members of like what we're building and great stewards and really want to join that, but just didn't even know that that was an option. Obviously, you want to have good art and good culture and good companies, right? And I'm only 26, but from what I like understand, what I saw, like a lot of the carrying out of like that 2010s woke agenda happened at the tech companies more than anything, right? So these were like not just the darlings of Wall Street. I mean, they were just posting insane gains on the stock market every single year. They're also hiring like thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And the culture of a lot of those people that they hired were very much people like grads coming off of like Occupy Wall Street. You kind of had like second term Obama, like hope. I think that was the slogan. And then maybe like hope wasn't actually like working. And then now you had like 2016 was coming and it was like, like Donald Trump. Oh, they're going to elect Trump. Right. And so, and yet they're in charge of algorithms at this point. They're in charge of capital. They're in charge of some of the largest like places where like people pay attention to. They're making shows or drafting themes and stuff like that, right? And so you had this huge kind of woke clique cartel. They were acting like a cartel. And it's like all these things like work in tandem, right? And then you had a sort of like graduation or kind of like a spiritual breakup, or these things kind of like took on different forms over time. Like it's like even difficult sometimes to even think about like Biden being president. It's as if like that didn't even happen. Like just this past year has been insane. Like I don't really remember what it was like to have Biden as a president. But anyways, like that's all to say. Like this sort of thing where you have people that are like on the same team as you, like in different institutions and different orgs, like it creates like interesting opportunities for like coordination. And like, it's not even these people were like necessarily even like coordinating. It's like that's maybe like a conspiratorial thing, but everybody was in line of like, yeah, we're going to push this and we're going to push that. And when you think about having something be Catholic, it's not that like you're going to be out there like Bible thumping or like we're going to enact like decency laws or anything like that. And it's just kind of like as simple as like, hey, like, we're just we're not going to like place a lot of import on like something like Cluely. We're not going to place a lot of import into Kalshi. Or in fact, like I think it is bad to invest in these things. Like a hot take, or like it is bad to like be associated with this, right? I mean, like you have some investors that run these like big funds that are like publicly tweeting about like how good OnlyFans is such a good business, man. OnlyFans is when I did my MBA at GS OnlyFans, I was like, dude, like, hey, like that's bad. It's killing the nation. It's killing the souls and sapping energy from like young men, and destroying the lives of the women that are being put into this platform. But it's a good business. And it's like when you don't have a lot of Catholics that are like in charge of capital or like have a lot of sway in terms of how that capital gets allocated and like the media that's around that, then you just kind of get like
Yeah.
these people are just kind of allowed to talk and feel like it won't come back to bite them.
And nobody stands up and says something like says, "Hey, like the emperor has no clothes," right? Nobody's pointing out that this is not right, right? I mean, I just want to reflect on what you said there. I think from my perspective, I think that the money piece is important, obviously, and I think we'd all agree on that. But it does seem to me that the true thing that would draw people in, as you're pointing out here, is that if the organizations are run by people who have a moral compass at all, because I don't think a lot of the former cohort of leaders in tech necessarily had that compass, because San Francisco is known for being the city of all kinds of experimental drugs, etc. Like they didn't necessarily have these moral compasses. And if the people who are building influential companies, whether that is a tech company or not, right, whether that is something that's coming out of Silicon Valley or not. The leaders have to have a sort of spine and a moral compass, so that way they surround themselves by people who also will meet their bar, because then those people will hire other people, and eventually you have a whole organization of people where things are either acceptable or they're not. And through the leaderships of these companies leading good lives and leading Christ-centered lives, Jesus will do the work. We don't have to be out there, like you say, preaching the gospel on the street, a corner or something, right? But if we live the gospel in our lives, people will notice it. They'll notice the harmony. And this is what I always find fascinating about the woke agenda, is like it came from people, and it was allowed by people who didn't necessarily have they weren't necessarily evil people, right? They just kind of got pushed over because they're like, I guess, like, these people feel pretty strongly about it. So they would just not say anything out of fear, probably, right? And it always had this sort of dissonance in their hearts, probably. They just ignored it, and they didn't have enough conviction to stand up against it. But when you see the Catholic way of life, we know it's true, so therefore it will resonate with them properly. And hypothetically, we'll see even more people come and join the mission, because now it's not going to be something artificially pushed like a woke agenda. It'll be something that's coming from God, right? So transforming the city, going back to that, transforming the city through, making it Catholic by living the faith, building good companies, building big companies, building influential companies, and then of course using your money to make the city beautiful again, or bring back more good art, I should say, because the city is pretty. I agree with you on that one. If I wasn't already married with kids, I think I would definitely be there in a heartbeat, man. You guys have convinced me of the greatness of that city. But all right, so I'd like to ask you your general opinion on, again, we're kind of on the theme of VC still. A lot of people who are Catholic, who are very ambitious, I find to be mostly focused on building some sort of, let's say, family business or some kind of legacy that their kids can take over. And you're obviously building a VC-backed startup, and you are one of those people I consider among the most ambitious Catholics I know. So I'm curious, like, what is
Oh,
your
thanks.
perspective on that? Like, did you ever consider the idea of building something that's a little bit, like, let's say, slower, more family business oriented, or do you still believe that there's a way that you can build a VC backed business that can still have that sort of family business vibe where it gets passed on through generations, or has some aspect to that?
No, yeah, no. I think like maybe there is I certainly do think about like succession and like legacy and all these things. Like I think about like text. I do think about like text being like it'll be like a value creating event, right? Like whether it's like 10 years in the future and we get like an insane acquisition offer or like an IPO, and like really, I mean, I always think of like new things to do in like bigger markets to explore. Like I write like angel checks to like my friends, and I think investing might be something interesting. I'm not like that particularly like goated at it yet. I am up 3x. Nothing will be liquid though for like years, but and I just started during the summer, so I think it's pretty good. But like in terms of like my legacy and all that, like I certainly think that my children will be like pretty good at software and understanding like where's software in the world. That being said, like I don't know what it'll look like at that stage. Like, I mean, I talk about that I mean, I could, like, if I met an ex girl tomorrow, I mean, like kid one could be come out in like 2 years or something. But like, I think like there'll be like kind of like a crowd or maybe like a pool of businesses or like one business or two businesses that they'll kind of like grow up with and be familiarized with, and like hopefully like be involved with to some level, like whether they're like wheelers or dealers or like they kind of strike out and do their own thing. But like how I thought about starting like a roofing business or like a good chain of restaurants or like building a real estate portfolio that like my kids can continue to grow and take on, like no, I just like I have to do this. I have to do like these like big, like I did these like some business that can only be like venture scale. And it's like there's a real thrill that comes in like working in like a big market and like finding these gaps and these opportunities and like assembling capital as quickly as you can, assembling talent as quickly as you can, building product, gaining market share, and like really playing to win like as fast and as hard as possible. That like just doesn't exist if you're doing like kind of more localized, like maybe like slower growth businesses, even though like the returns on those are pretty great. There's a lot of ways to make a good living for yourself, but like I have to do this.
Yeah, I mean, this is interesting. This idea of destiny, I guess you could say. Like, I think hearing you talk about this with conviction is interesting to me, because again, like there's a lot of people who will, and I used to be in this category. I would say I tend to fall in this category many times in other ways too. But I'm like, oh, there's an ideal way to do things, right? And I used to apply that thought process generally to building companies, and like, oh, there's a Catholic way to do this. But in reality, when you look at the lives of the saints, there's all these saints who don't fit those buckets. Like I think Saint Joan of Arc is one of the best examples. Like, you know, this young girl leads an army, military army. Like we were like, what the heck is this? This doesn't fit into our bucket of what's the ideal, you know, life to live. But yet that's what God was calling her to, right? And I think that we all have to
Yes.
understand that about ourselves. Of like, what are we called to do? What is our mission in life? And in some cases, that might be continuing on what we were raised with from seeing our father or our parents, or it could be something different that we feel, you know, called to do. And I don't know if you have any of those, any thoughts around that.
Yeah, you know, like Zach Slateback had brought up a good word, because I often think about like this word called like thumos, like this sort of like this energy that radiates from your chest. And I'm always like trying to like grow that and whatever. And then like you also hear about a lot of stuff from the sort of like neo-pagan people. And that's like a very attractive, like scene to be a part of, and really attractive ideas, because they very much like, they're very self-gratifying. Like it's kind of like the meme of like, you know, you're looking at like a Greek statue and you're like, that's literally me. And like there's definitely a glory and like shaping yourself and molding yourself and like becoming like the smartest, fittest person you absolutely can, right? There is like a level of transcendence in the religiosity of like exercise, whether it's like physical or mental, and that's found in discipline, that is truly sweet fruit, right? The danger, you know, like a lot of these guys like BAP and like so on and so forth, the danger of that is like a lot of what they're saying is like very real, right? Of like, you know, like, oh, like we can become like gods and we can do like this and like that, right? And what's interesting is like we kind of say the same thing in Catholicism, like, you know, you can be like, there's a God inside of you, like you can be like God, but the God we're talking about is like Christ crucified, right? And like we're aiming to be like Christ, you know, and there's, I mean, there's a lot of like kind of eschatology you can get into, versus like over there, it's like, this is bad. Like this is like, we're not jumping into volcanoes here and like do sacrifices. And what's missing in the Catholic world when we talk about business, we talk about greatness, is something that Zach had mentioned. And this is what Zach was talking about, was like this concept of like magnificence, right? Like we have saints that were kings, right? And like they were literally kings ruling with like divine right. And like people saw the king once or twice and they're like, yeah, like I'm dying for that guy. Like he's awesome, right? Like he's incredible. Like he's so powerful and like all that. And so like that is like a Catholic, this is like a Catholic quality that can be cultivated and that needs to be thought about. And like, actually, you know, we've kind of been in this, I mean, you could say like forever, but really kind of very noticeably, especially as like wealth disparity increases, we have been in this, like poverty has been really the topic of the Catholic Church for like 50, 70 years, and like helping the suffering, and like obviously super important. But then there's this like thing that gets neglected. And it's really like for those people that feel kind of called to these like greater things, or like want to pursue these greater things, they then go like find, you know, like a home there, like a home there, a home there, when like actually like, we should have like complete dominion and like
Mhm.
intellectual ownership over like these concepts of greatness, these intense and great concepts of greatness as well.
At this point, you've heard me mention our mission many times. We're building an army of Catholic entrepreneurs who are committed to reinserting God into the culture. Well, if this mission resonates with you, we want you to be part of the Catholic Founders Guild. You can think of this as kind of an association of Catholic business owners who share the same mission and who take this idea of bringing back God into the culture actually very seriously. We're currently around 50 members and growing quickly. And when you become a member, you can find other Catholics to do business with, to buy services from, to invest in and alongside. All of this is possible with our member directory. And on top of that, we do have 2 to 3 calls each month with the community. One to discuss a particular topic, like stewardship or competition, some of the recent conversations we've had on that. One to learn from an expert and ask them questions, like our recent one on the tax changes, or our next one coming up with Ellen Twomey, who is talking to us about how to grow our sales and our business, but in a virtuous way. And the other is more open-ended community hangout call. These will happen every single month. There's also no specific time commitment asked of you when you join the Catholic Founders Guild. If you want to be heavily involved, you're welcome to. If you just want to be a member of the Guild but don't really have time to attend the calls, all we ask is that you stay committed to the mission of building for God and be open to meeting other members of the Guild when they reach out. To join, the first step is to upgrade to a paid membership on our Substack. Think of it like Patreon if you're not familiar. Just go to catholicfounders.com/subscribe. It's only $10 a month or $100 a year, so literally anybody can afford it. Oh, and I forgot to mention, many of the members have ended up actually finding customers within the community within just a few months of joining. So what I'm saying is you're likely going to get your $100 back, even if not directly through sales, at least in value and advice from the Guild. We will see you on the inside. I mean, it's interesting because all greatness only comes from God, right? So, like, whatever greatness that
Yeah.
individuals achieve, pursuing their own greatness for their own sake, for pride, it's only some sort of like, shred of a sliver of a reflection of God, right? Like, all good things are reflections of God in some way. And this is, I think, the very big difference. And it's quite motivating to me personally that, like, you can become like God in the sense that you're doing it because you want to imitate every aspect of him. You want to be like him, not because you want your own glory, right? You do it because
Yeah.
you want to give glory to God who created all things. And I think that it's a very difficult thing. It's very hard. It's a very fine line to not cross over. But we do know that God gives us the grace if we ask for it to have that. So this is why it's also to me, much more. I don't know. It's like it's a very encouraging item to be a founder of any sort, whether that's VC scaled or not. Pursue greatness in what you build because it's like you can do it in a way that it is possible to do it in a way that is godly rather than just self-centered and selfish, right? So I appreciate your perspective there. I'm curious, there's a lot about topics we go over. I want to talk a little bit more personally for you. Like, what do you, when you look back at the end of your life, you imagine you're on your deathbed, like, what do you imagine that you want to see? What do you want to see at the end of your life that you achieved?
I just want to feel like I left it all out on the court. Like there's you've heard this many times before, but I talk about this like concept of like death athleticism. And this is a concept that was introduced to me by Cody Wilson, the ghost gunner guy. It's like the title of the documentary that was kind of made about him. And they're two words that sound really good, like death athletic, death athlete. Like, ooh, sounds cool. And it's kind of a phrase coined by this German philosopher, Peter Sloterdijk, who wrote this book called like You Must Change Your Life. And generally, at least like as I understood it, or like kind of with the theme that it kind of is front of mind for me was like, okay, religion will sort of improve and be more pervasive in society in the century, but it won't necessarily be due to like a like complete satisfaction or like the truth of the religion or it's like true nature, but that or like religious exercise kind of like in of itself is like transcendent enough. And that's because like there are like techniques of humanity, like they're like much like, Kobe will like, will have like done all these drills and do all this stuff. We are training every day towards something. We are training every day towards our death. Right. And in the book, he has the example of like the ultimate death athlete, which is like Christ, right? Especially Christ crucified, Christ on his way to be crucified, right? Like a very heavy cross, right? Like breaks no bones, right? Like really, I mean, just like how well he suffers, right? Like for hours and hours and hours on end, training his entire, I mean, he goes to the, like even in the Garden of Gethsemane, right? And like wills the strength, right? To go like on a suffering. I mean, we call it, it's like, it's the passion, right? And so like, like Christ left it all, did it left it all, and like at the end of my life, I mean, and it's the very Catholic thing of like, it's never enough, which I think is good. Right. But I like at least maybe have everyone that like I trained up tell me like, man, you did it. Like you left it all on the court, and I think that's a good thing to think about, a good direction to go is that you like left it all. You really push yourself to become as death athletic as possible.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really powerful. I mean, that to me, when you say that all, it just makes me think of St. Paul. Like he clearly is kind of he talks about athletics, like, run the good race, like fight the good fight. And he worked his butt off to try to bring people back to God, right? Even obviously he has his own conversion story. I think that might be part of it, but it's just like giving it all is for the right reasons. There's something that resonates with you about it because it's one thing to do it for a trophy, right? But it's another thing to do it for the ultimate trophy, which is heaven, right? Which is true love of
Mhm.
God, right? So I think that that's interesting. I want to ask you about your motivations. I mentioned you earlier that you're a very motivated person. Has this always been something that you've had? Like, have you always been quite motivated? I'm always curious to understand where it comes from.
No, I think there were years where I was very unmotivated. Like I was young. I think you just generally have like a lot of curiosity about the world and like things are really beautiful and like new and fresh. And there's something that's good about your nature. And I think when I got into college for a couple years, I was like just kind of like doing whatever. And then I would find like good missions and kind of like go about them for like 6, 8 months and then find like the next thing and like find the next thing and the next thing. And like, unfortunately, like I am one of those people that has to be doing something that is everything has to kind of have a reason behind it, not like in the sense of like why am I doing this? Like, this is like driving shareholder value. It's more so like it like has to be part of like this bigger story. Like I like stories. Everybody likes stories. People work for stories. They live stories. Everything is a story. And once you kind of are like that, you can't like unsee it. So for me, what motivates me is obviously like this like broader story that like I'd like to tell people about our company, broader story I'd like to tell people about myself, the broader story I'd like to tell people about my Christ. And that reflects in the way I do the company and the way I like comport myself, the way that we do this, the way that we do that. There's just kind of like just layers and layers of stories with different beginnings and different endings that are just kind of happening simultaneously. And there's like enough of that in my life across the board that it's like, okay, like there's always like another like chapter to write and like another page to pick up.
Yeah. Was there any particular aspect of your faith that kind of changed motivation or how you go about doing things at some point? Because I'm not sure, and you didn't necessarily share too much here, but like the background, like what's the background of your faith? Like, was it always important? Once it, if it wasn't, like once it became more important, did it change the way you were motivated? I'm curious to understand that relationship.
Yeah, I grew up Maronite Catholic. Actually, I'm an Eastern Catholic, and that was like a great church here in San Antonio, St. George Maronite. My dad um, is the organist and was the organist growing up, and I really saw a lot of like community. I do feel like I kind of like maybe lacked the interest in kind of everything else that was going on. Right. And not necessarily due to anyone's fault in particular, like really just maybe due to my own like laziness and going down like certain rabbit holes and like actually trying to figure out like who is Christ and where exactly is like the kingdom of Christ in like this like broader world and this divine comedy. And so like yeah, when I think about like my faith life today, it's been like a long process of uh, and this is a very like technical Catholic term, but humiliation, right? Of like being humbled and like practicing like cultivating humility and allowing that to sort of like show you kind of where you were wrong, like where you were misstepping. Um, Places that were foggy all of a sudden aren't foggy anymore. There's obviously a lot of knowledge that like can't necessarily be fully understood. Kind of like a priori of faith, of, like an experience and encounter like with God and like the Holy Spirit and whatnot. So yeah, it's just like a constant like living thing. And growing up, I think I just kind of got one shotted by like the leftist interpretation of like Nietzsche, and I was like kind of very mad about like living in like the burbs as like a kid in high school, like who like very much like wanted to like be in a different place and like live in a different world that was like more beautiful and like more good with like smarter and like I knew these people were out there and like they just kind of like weren't around me and I was just like pissed that I wasn't like like there essentially. Like I read like started to read like Mark Fisher and like Zizek. Like, obviously you're also like at this edgy like high schooler and you're like, oh, like I know like this like and like Marxism at the time was like the woke thing was like really cool back then. And like also like to get scholarships, like it was good if you were like, oh, like I'm a poor Mexican kid. Oh, so there's like a lot of buy-in. Like they wanted you to buy in as well. Like everybody, maybe not everybody was like evil with like the woke agenda, but like they sure were policing. And so yeah, it's like when they're sort of guarding access to resources and you're trying to like make it like that certainly like was something that I played into for not too long. I think I was like kind of maybe early to like starting to be contrarian on some stuff.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. It's funny that we're the same age, but I think we had a very, very different perspectives on like understanding that aspect and like the way we react to the culture, because I was like raised in a place where there's like we were completely secluded from the world basically, so it was very different perspective of how I was raised. But awesome, man. Well, this has been good. Let's wrap up with some rapid fire here, and we'll call it a day. What is
Sure.
your favorite scripture?
Psalm 51, 100%. Yeah. So good. Everyone should, or like some Bibles, it's 50, but it's mostly 51 for everybody.
What's it about?
It's like, it's one of the great penitential psalms. There's a lot of like really, there's a lot of stuff that people say every single day. That's out of there. So like the aspergisement is out of there, right? Like wash me with hyssop and I shall like cleanse me with hyssop and I shall be clean. Wash me, I'll be whiter than snow is from there. Like every morning when I wake up, I say one or two things, which is like, oh God, come to my assistance. Oh Lord, make haste to help me, which like a lot of like, it's like in the liturgy of the hours, which is like a slight kind of rearrangement of words. You know, you've got like, Lord, open my lips and my mouth shall proclaim your praises. But it's also one of those like pieces of scripture, kind of like John 1, where you just kind of get this very large chunk of church history and theology in one thing, right? Like all of Christianity is in John 1. Psalm 51, I wouldn't say all of Christianity is inside of it as well, but it is kind of talking about like the like sacrifice and covenants and how those will like basically play out like over time. And obviously too, like, I don't know, I'm a very, like, it's just very
Yeah,
beautiful. And I think it's good. Like people say Catholic guilt is bad, but I'm like, it is good. It's a
nice.
good thing.
Who's your favorite entrepreneur and why?
Favorite entrepreneur right now, I think my favorite entrepreneur for a long time, I was very resistant to learning about him because I was like, oh, everyone says that. But I'm like kind of in a Steve Jobs phase at the moment. I'm like, okay, like who was Steve Jobs? Like I never really asked myself that question. I'm a hater. So if people are really into something, I haven't seen, I won't ever watch, I probably won't watch Severance for like 2 years, until it's like not cool or something. So yeah, I'm really into Steve Jobs right now. I think Brad Jacobs is good, although he says, I think Brad Jacobs could use like going to church. I think that'd be good for him. Uh,
Yeah, I think
yeah,
he's a
he's a cool
legend though
guy.
in terms of like his method of building. I like that. Like that's my goal, is to be able to
Yeah,
have
it's good.
the like to use the strategies that he does in a way like kind of play at that level of the game basically. So,
Yes.
and who's your favorite saint?
Rich Saint, I gotta go with Saint Charbel. Yeah, Saint Charbel's so goated. Maronite, you know, so like obviously like I'm gonna pick someone on the team, but like he's, you know, widely loved by a lot of people worldwide. But I actually was thinking about this yesterday because my friend, I loaned it to my friend and I just like haven't gotten it back. And it was like very rare. It was like a like translated like homilies of his, and they're really short. And you hear these stories of him like he didn't like to look at like straight ahead. He was either looking down or he was looking at God. He was so humble, you know, always like eating like the leftover food, always like the leftover rags, you know, always like just, you know, giving everything to God, everything. And yeah, I think he's like really great. If we, I mean, there's obviously like Saint Bruno, but like if I was to be like a monk, I'd like to be a Carthusian. I think Carthusians are very cool. Like I like that you get like no name and you just kind of die and they just put a cross up and they're like, yep. Like I'm like that's good. And so Saint Charles like maybe the same most like kind of proximate to that.
Yeah, nice. And what's your favorite devotion?
And I don't think I really have one. I'm not a big devotions guy to be frank with you, but like during the mass, I bring a book of devotions actually like for like during mass. And one of the ones that I still kind of think about a lot is at the washing of the hands, just kind of like praying for the priests and just like recognizing what that is. A good like I could say like the rosary, I could say the Angelus, like those count, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Well, obviously rosary, like good. Everyone should pray the rosary every day. But the Angelus, underrated. Big Angelus guy. Think Angelus is great because every day you get to make 3 decisions that are like, am I going to stop what I'm doing right now and do the Angelus, or am I
Yeah,
not?
I mean
And I think it's
that
good
one's so
to
fun
get these
because
questions every day.
especially when you use the that Angelus extension that we both have,
Everyone should download that. Yeah.
yeah, it pops up and you either like you definitely have to face that decision like, yes, God, nah, God, I'm good. So I appreciate that, man.
So true.
But this has been great to have you on. Obviously, I'm a big fan of what you're building. I think that what you guys are doing in general in San Francisco is very inspiring, and I would encourage anybody who's not familiar, to try to get more familiar with what you guys are doing and building. And if anybody is listening to this in San Francisco, get in touch with these guys and get in touch with them about the debates they're hosting and all these things. Like, there's so many amazing things that's going on, but it takes everybody working together to build this and to make San Francisco Catholic again. So I appreciate you coming on, man. This is a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to seeing where you guys continue to take things.
Thank you, Silas.
All right, everybody. I hope that conversation with Fed left you as fired up as it left me. There is something so powerful about the way that he frames our work, not just as a way to make a living, but to kind of just have this to the death athletic pursuit of excellence, if you will. And a few things that just you can reflect on from today's episode is, first of all, the duty of greatness. Fed touched on this idea that we focus too much on poverty aspect of the faith, like the poverty aspect of the faith, which is vital, of course, but we also perhaps neglect the call to magnificence. If God has given you the talent to build something massive, are you holding back? Are you preventing yourself from doing this because of some false sense of humility, perhaps? Secondly, with this idea of transforming your city, right? Whether you're in San Francisco, Nashville, or some small town in the Midwest, how are you living your faith so visibly that the culture around you has no choice but to take notice? Then we talked about the power of the Angelus. I love how Fed pointed out that the Angelus as a daily decision point is just like a moment to stop and ask yourself, am I going to prioritize God right now, or am I going to do my own work? And a quick shout out to the Angelus Bell Chrome extension that my friend Daniel Egan made. He's been on the podcast, as you heard him talk about the St. Joseph murals in the past, and it pops open in just the Angelus with nice bells at 6, noon at 6. It's a really great hack. Good way to help you remember to say the Angelus. And then if you are an engineer or builder in the industrial space, I definitely would reach out to Fed and the team at Tex. They are doing really incredible work re-industrializing the country. And if you're in the Bay Area, get over to Star of the Sea and join that community. They've got a really great Catholic entrepreneur community building there. They are truly building something special. We've got a lot of members there too, so it's a good place to go and hang out with a bunch of others in this group. So as always, if you enjoyed the show, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast player, share this with another Catholic entrepreneur, and subscribe on YouTube. This is the only way we grow, is you help share it and spread the word about it. So thank you guys for doing that. Happy building, everyone, and God bless. We will see you next time on Catholic Founders.